great opportunity here to not only have my friend Bill Pascrell, international superstar, well, gaming expert is really what he's international gaming expert, has the third. You have to say it like that. Actually, the third. There's one, obviously the original. There's two, Due, and there's three, the third, BP3, and then there's four, Quattro. I don't know if we're IV. Do we? Well, we'll come back to him. He hasn't done anything yet, but I have a feeling he's got a nice new job. He's on some trajectory, so that's his son. So you know what? I want you to explain the difference between the namesake of a first, second, and third versus a junior and senior. Do you know that? Do you know the difference?
No.
Do you guys know? You don't? So your dad and his dad, same name. Okay. When it's a junior and a senior, I believe you share the same middle name as well, right?
Of course.
Right.
So a lot of people say, oh, junior, senior. We're not really junior, senior, although you can identify
different
us.
middle names.
Yeah. So people will say, oh, senior, call him junior, but we have different middle names. People refer to you as BP3, which is really cool. That's a cool handle. And it has all to do with, again, your father, obviously, the legacy of that. Your family's very entrenched in the political scene, right? You can talk a little bit about your dad. I want you to share with us some of your background and just then we'll kind of let it fly.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, John and John Jr. You've had such a meteoric rise in your career, and I've known you for a long time. I'm really thrilled at where you've gone and the struggles you've gone through. So it's appreciated.
Thank you.
My grandfather came off the boat when he was 6 years old from Italy, and he swept out rail cars. Never went to school, ever. My grandfather ended up working for Richard Nixon at Mudge Rose, the law firm, the famous Nixon law firm, with no college education, because he worked his way up through the railroad. Came to Patterson, settled, married my grandmother, Rafi Lafredo, and he had his first child was my dad, William James Pascrell Jr. I am William James Pascrell III, comma, Roman numeral 3. And my son Billy, who just turned 30, is William J. Pascrell IV. We call him IV. It's a proud legacy. Whether Billy decides to have a fifth, that's up to him.
Oh, he's got
But
to.
as your dad just pointed out so eloquently, you only get that sort of royalty if you have the same name.
Right.
But people are doing it today just because nobody follows rules anymore, and that's okay. John, you met my dad many times. You've met my son Billy, and I think you have too, Johnny. Mm-hmm. But you would have loved my grandfather. My grandfather was not a Democrat. My grandfather was a Rockefeller Republican, a rules follower, a big supporter of gun rights, but a big supporter of liberties and freedoms. And his son turned out to be a U.S. congressman. That's a Democrat. The former Mayor Patterson, a legislator. So my dad's had a public service career. What I like to say to break his chops, he's never had a legitimate job. He's always worked for government, school teacher, college professor, assemblyman, legislator, Mayor Patterson for 8 years, and then went to Congress. So he's in his 30th year in Congress. And he's a good egg. He's what I call a right-minded Democrat. He's not to the left, but he's also not to the right. He's kind of right down the middle, trying to bring people together, a populist. You know, my background's pretty simple. Born and raised in Patterson. Went to Patterson School 26. I was the only white kid in my kindergarten class, so my children can pick me out of a lineup in the class very easily. I stand out pretty well. But, you know, what that has given me is an appreciation for diversity and inclusion and equity. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but the lived experience. And I like that. You know, we shouldn't judge people by the way they worship their God or by their sexuality or by the way they cook their food. We should respect all people. And you may disagree with their political views, but how can you disagree with something they were born into?
Of course.
Patterson is a love for me. I love the city. It's called the Silk City, where the Colt 45 was built and the first locomotive, steam engine, the submarine, etc. There's so much history. And my dad, and I'm proud of him for it, when Obama was president, was able to get a bill passed to name the Great Falls, designated a national park.
I was just going to ask you.
And it's really cool. Like, most people don't know, outside of Niagara Falls, it's the largest waterfall in the eastern region of the country.
Really?
It's a cool place to visit. We are dedicating, which is right up your guys' alley, Larry Doby, who's the unsung African-American ball player from Patterson, played for the Cleveland Indians. Jackie Robinson deservedly gets all the credit. Larry Doby was right behind him and went through some major struggles. So Hinchliffe Stadium, which is right next to the falls, just did a $100 million redevelopment project with restaurants, and the Jersey Jackals from Montclair are going to start playing there. Many high school teams will play there. We're trying to get a soccer team. That dedication is May 17th, and we'll have a bunch of politicos there. Larry Doby's family will be there, and then a bunch of Mets and Yankees and so on and so forth.
So very interesting, poignant for me. I had the pleasure, opportunity. Larry Doby, when I was 18 years old, came and gave us little hitting instructions. So I played baseball.
You're a baseball player.
I played baseball
right,
at Verona, right? And Larry Doby came to my Legion team, and we were not familiar with who Larry Doby was, but learned as we got certainly a little older to appreciate it. So I got to meet him, and that was really cool. And he was talking to us about hitting and some of the things that he went through and some of the struggles that he encountered, to your point, playing and breaking into Major League Baseball. The falls, as you pointed out, and you may not remember this, but after any storm, after any big rainstorm, you go down to the Patterson Falls, and it's unbelievable.
It is,
right? The power of that water and the spray and the mist, that it's something that if you're in the North Jersey area in Patterson, you got to go see, right? You just stop over. And there's a lot of history down there with railroads, so there's some cool museums and stuff. So it's a nice little niche place to visit if you have a Saturday afternoon you want to kill. But
let me tell you something, John. You're spot on. Johnny, you have to go see it after a storm, because photos or YouTubes or videos don't justify it.
Right.
You get the mist when you're like a half a mile away.
I mean, we live 3 minutes away.
You're right there.
I'm surprised I've never done it.
I believe I've taken you as a small.
You probably did.
As a small buck. Yeah, I've taken
the old Patterson Falls. Huh?
I'm telling you, I know I've taken Victoria there.
Let me tell you a funny story. Your dad will know this spot on. You may, because you're very well learned. In 1992, when Billy IV was born, July 3rd, we used to have what's called the Great Falls Festival. My dad's Mayor Patterson. Felipe Petite. If you don't know this name, you will. Felipe Petite's the guy that walked across the World Trade Centers on a wire. Mm-hmm. Like, who does that? Yeah. He did it back and forth and spun around, and like, wow. My dad got him to come to the falls to walk across the falls on a tightrope. And then he has a little motorcycle he does it with, and my dad was under it, right? And it's not as high as the World Trade Center, obviously. But in the middle of him going across, my son Billy was born. So my dad says, take me back, gets off, goes to the hospital. But Felipe Petite is a phenomenal character, French, and walked across many different, gaps. But to have him come to the falls is very famous, and it's known. People today don't appreciate that stuff.
That's insane.
As much. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow, Dan would do that. The guy behind camera would for sure walk across.
There you go. He looks like a Felipe Petite, very fit and trim and
loose cannon. We call him.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you never know what he's gonna do.
You got to be a loose cannon to do that stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's so many things I want to hit on today, and I love the fact that you brought up your background. We appreciate that. Let's get into the gambling, right? Because that's what first of all, I don't even know what the term lobby means. Like, what does it mean to lobby?
So the U.S. Constitution has what's called the freedom to petition the government. What I do for a living is constitutionally protected. Lobbying, John, is what I do it in a more elegant way, but what I call educating and advocating a position for an entity, a union, a business, an operation, an organization, an industry, bar owners, pharmaceutical, petrochemical, whatever their issues are, it's lobbying, arguing the government to understand and appreciate your position. Now, the term lobbyist comes from a beautiful hotel bar. The hotel bar is called the Robin. The hotel's called the Willard, 2 blocks away from the White House. And in the early days of the U.S. government, the presidents of the United States used to come across to have a drink. And in that bar, they referred to it as a lobby. The lobbyists, the advocates, the legal would come in and kind of grip and grin and try to argue their position.
Right.
Don't raise taxes. Don't ban this. Don't do that. So like I lobby cannabis.
Right.
Medical and recreational. So I have to convince the government that that's okay to do, and here's why. And I always say what I do, I educate before I advocate. If you don't understand the cannabis industry, why would you support it? Right. You got to understand it and then be able to make an informed decision.
So
does that make sense?
Totally. Cool. And so you started, from what I know, with gambling, right? Gambling and sports gambling is what you really started lobbying for?
No, he's been lobbying for.
So I've been with my firm is 36 years old. It's founded by my partner, Dale Florio. No relation to Governor Florio. Dale is a Republican. He needed a Democrat to come in. He was always fearful if he brought me in, I'd run for office. I'll tell you right now, spot on. They say never in politics. I will never run for office. I have no interest. Right. And we could get into that. I joined my firm after working as counsel to Governor Florio. Governor Florio was a governor from 1990 to 1994. He lost to Christie Todd Whitman. I had that job for 4 years. He didn't get reelected. He lost. So now I'm out of a job. My current firm tries to lobby me to join their firm. I said, no, I'm not ready yet. I want to become a chief of staff in Washington, D.C. for a member of Congress who was the predecessor to my dad.
Okay.
He lost. So now in 2 years, I'm out of 2 jobs. Wow. And my ex-wife, who John knows well, Kelly Vanderhoof Pascrell, is a great woman, still a great friend. We had an amicable divorce, thank God. Yeah. And our kids are all doing well. She said, Bill, go out and get a real job. So I joined my firm 28 years ago, January. The first client I got that I brought in, I didn't join a firm as a partner, was the FMBA, the Firemen's Union. They knew me from when I worked in the governor's office and thought I treated them well. They said, Bill, we want to hire you to advocate our positions. Pay, pensions, all those issues. Second client I got, which is a little depressing, but was the funeral directors. So we like to say we represent cradle to grave. We represent the pediatricians and the morticians. The third client I worked on, I did not get. I won't get emotional, but God rest his soul, one of my mentors, John Russo, who was the Senate president, acting governor, joined our firm. He was very close to a guy called Nick Ribis from Verona, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Nick Ribis was Donald Trump's right-hand man, not politically, in the casino industry. So I was brought in to lobby for Trump's 3 properties, Taj Mahal, Trump Tower, and what was the third one? Whatever the heck it was. The 3 Trump properties in Atlantic City, Trump Marina. And then this is a really funny story. A guy I went to law school with, Keith McKenna, who I got along with okay, but he wasn't like your dad and I, we weren't tight. Right. He calls me up, and this is before Google. This is like 6 years ago. He says, Bill, I'm in Vegas, and I'm working for Steve Wynn. And I told him he needs to meet you because he needs a lobbyist in New Jersey for a project. And I paused, and I said, who the frick is Steve Wynn? I didn't know who the hell he was. 3 weeks later, I'm driving my Honda Civic from Patterson, New Jersey, down to Margate, right outside Atlantic City. And I remember pulling up, no phone, we only had beepers at the time. Pull up, I'm like trying to find directions. You know, you used to print them out. There was no GPS. You would understand that.
We talked a little bit.
These guys are looking at us like we're from, 100 years ago. And I pull up to this house on the beach. And it's vivid to me. I've told this story a few times, but it's important to me because it's luck is the residue of hard work. And I'm very lucky. Hopefully because I work hard. So I knock on the door, and a butler comes to the door and opens the door and says, you're Bill Pascrell? Yeah, come on in. Mr. Wynn's in the back sun porch. So he shuts the door. There's 2 steel cages with albino tigers in them. That's Steve Wynn.
Come on.
You know, Wynn, Encore. I was like, what the heck?
In his house.
No, and I'm like thinking like hostel type stuff, even though hostel wasn't around then, but I'm like, in his house. Go to the back porch. Steve Wynn's got sunglasses on. So you're me. He's looking out into the ocean. Never looks me in the eye. Never. He talks to me. Oh, hi, you're Bill. Yeah, I heard I had to meet you. Here's what. He's legally blind. I didn't know that.
When did you find out?
Like, I found out at that meeting because he never looked me in the eye, never shook my hand. Here's the story. He has had a property where the Borgata is now in Atlantic City. You know the Borgata, the like Vegas style property.
Sure.
He had the property but had no access to it. He needed to build that tunnel you go through to get to it. He said, I need to hire you. And we're talking. I go, I think I could do that. What's it going to cost? He says, well, we have projections about $450 million. We need a little help with that, but we need approvals by the state to build the tunnel to access our property. Long story short, I leave, driving back up in my Honda Civic, get home, 3 hours to Patterson. I get a phone call on my house phone. I was living with my parents. Said, John Russo said to me, Bill, what the frick did you do today? I said, I don't know. I went down to Atlantic City and met with somebody. Did you meet with Steve Wynn? I said, yeah, I didn't even know who the hell he was. He says, Donald Trump called Nick Ribis. Nick Ribis called me. You and I need to go to Trump Tower tomorrow morning. I assumed Trump Tower was in New York. Had never been there. Next morning, I drive in, go up the elevator. Trump's in that famous gold-plated office, which is right below his apartment.
And there's Bengal tigers?
No Bengal tigers. No albino tigers.
Okay. No.
And Trump says, you're Bill Pascrell III? I said, yes, Mr. Trump. He goes, you're fired. So my ex-wife likes to say I'm the inspiration.
Wait a minute, what?
My ex-wife likes to say I'm the inspiration for The Apprentice. Why did he fire me? So I go, like my eyes are welling up. I'm a young 27.
Wait. Those are the words he said to you.
You're fired.
No explanation.
Get the fuck out of here.
He brought you in. He brought you in.
Just to say you're fired, not to call me up on the phone, want to look me in the eye.
But why?
I'll tell you.
Okay.
I walk out into the hallway. John Russo is holding back and talking to him. Half hour later, he comes back, and I'm like, I had no cell phone. I couldn't look through my phone, right? And like I'm like sitting there looking at the walls. There's a cobweb over there, whatever. He comes out, he goes, Bill, you met with Donald Trump's mortal enemy. I said, who the hell's that? Steve Wynn. Oh. Listen to this story. Steve Wynn, you've been to Vegas, I know you have.
Yeah.
There's a Trump Tower in Vegas that's just a hotel, no casino. Why is that? Steve Wynn lobbied to make sure Trump never got a casino license in Vegas. So they hated each other. Now, 2 things fast forward. Trump becomes president. You know who's the head of his inaugural committee? Steve Wynn. They made friends.
Full circle.
Full circle. But I leave. Trump owed us quite a bit of money, never paid it. That's his MO. Oh. And I'm not anti-Trump because of his politics necessarily. I'm anti-Trump because of his character. But we got the tunnel built. Steve Wynn hired us. The rest is history. That's how I got really into the gaming industry.
Because of that?
That got me motivated to get more involved. So then I started representing all the casinos in Atlantic City. Many of the casinos in Vegas, brick and mortar.
Just make sure the mic is...
Brick and mortar. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So that had to have been exciting for you and said, this is the space I want to be in. And I'm assuming working with Steve Wynn was a good reputation for then you.
Yes, even though I didn't have a clue to who he was.
Right.
Being able to be successful at getting that project done with a Republican governor, and I'm not a Republican, so it showed my ability to pivot. Number one. Number two, by virtue of that, other casinos in Atlantic City were like, we got to hire this guy.
Right.
He's a pit bull, whatever they called me. Then I started doing work in Vegas. Then I started doing work with Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods in Connecticut. And then, you know, back then, 30 years ago, there were only 2 cities with casinos, Vegas and Atlantic City, Reno to a degree. Then in 2009, just to fast forward, I'm at this point in time, Johnny and John, I'm representing all 12 casinos in Atlantic City and probably another half dozen in Vegas. Not doing any international work yet. I get a phone call. John, you'll remember this, I think, because I joined North Jersey in 2003, so you and I were good friends at the time.
Yeah.
I get a phone call at my office, not mobile, hardline. Joe Brennan's on the line for you, Bill. Pick up the phone, Joe Brennan. Joe Brennan used to work for Google. He left Google to start up an organization called iMega, the Interactive Media Entertainment Gaming Organization, which is made up of 37 offshore illegal books, meaning these were U.S. Pats, U.S. patriots, who left the country because of the Wire Act and were doing illegal online sports betting offshore where the government couldn't get them. Yeah. So Bodog, Bovado, all those companies that you're familiar with, I'm sure, just experiential. He said, I need to hire you. I want to bring online gaming to America. I said, what the hell is online gaming? I didn't know what the hell it was. He says, I want to legalize sports betting. I said, what are you talking about? You can bet on sports in Nevada. He said, but you can't do it anywhere else. And he said, I want to bring exchange wagering to America. I said, Joe, I know you're going to think I'm silly and soft, but I'm not. I'm hard as a rock. It's 30 days before an election. John Corzine, the Goldman Sachs guy, is the governor. He's in a tough race with Chris Christie. I can't do anything for you the next 30 days. He goes, Bill, you don't understand. I don't need your resume. I don't need you to tell me all about yourself. I know who you are. A First Amendment rights attorney has told me you're the guy. And he told me this is why we need to hire you. I said, well, that's great, but I'm not letting you hire me because I can't do anything for you till after the election. Yeah, but if I give you $1, will you lock in and not let anybody else hire you because I think others are coming? So you have to give me $1. Fine. Corzine loses November of 2009. The next day, and I'm hung over like a bitch because I was out that night thinking Corzine was going to get reelected. I'm a Democrat, wanted him to win. Christie wins. Thank God my partner was tight with Christie. Joe Brennan called me and paid me a ridiculous amount of money to start to lobby Johnny and John exchange wagering, which is peer-to-peer betting. You put a bet up, I put a bet up, the exchange takes a little rake, like the stock exchange, and then if you win, I pay you. If I win, you pay me, and there's a little rake out. Yep. We got exchange wagering going in horse racing, got that done quick. Then I started to lobby legal sports betting outside of Nevada. The NFL came in, got an injunction, and we had the 10-year battle, which we'll talk about, repealing PASPA, the Professional Amateur Sports Protection Act. Then I think my greatest accomplishment was getting first state in the nation to do it, and then I've done it in 7 other states. Legal, regulated online gaming, casino, and poker. Yeah. Jersey was the first state to do it. Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Connecticut, Rhode Island.
I knew that. I didn't realize you were the guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
You're the guy.
Yeah, so, because if you want to get something done, don't take credit for it, get it done, and let somebody else take credit for it.
That's awesome.
Because the people that need to know.
A lot of sound bites here from Billy.
This is awesome.
I got to write these down.
Well, I mean, my question, so take me through, I guess, very high level, what that looks like, right? So you're lobbying for something like this. Is it like a regular court case? Like, and you're just...
No.
What is that? Is it like a...
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't want to bore you or your audience, but I'll try to do it in a fast-paced way.
Yeah.
So remember, I told you I'm representing all the brick and mortar casino, B&M they call them, brick and mortar casino.
Yeah.
They fired me. Why did they fire me? Because they believed, Johnny and John, that online gaming would cannibalize the brick and mortar casino industry.
Yeah.
Okay, it would take their customers away. Mm-hmm. So the first committee hearing, now I get fired by them, but this iMega company, that association of 37, I had to get an attorney general's opinion to say I could accept their money because their money's illegal. It's like, like prostitution, drugs, whatever illicit,
black market
there's black market.
Right.
The AG said, opined that I could take that money because they were lobbying to legalize it. They were paying me with bad money to legalize it.
Right.
So I got an exception. Committee hearing, I'm really fast forwarding. I could get as granular as you want. I'm before the Senate Gaming Committee. The entire 12 casinos, this is 2010 and 11, the entire brick and mortar casinos, all of them, Golden Nugget to Tropicana to Taj Mahal, all of them are lobbying against it. It was just me.
So it was their lawyers against you.
They're lobbyists against
lobbyists,
me.
okay.
Lobbyist lawyers.
So it's 12 of them.
Every lobbyist isn't a lawyer, and every lawyer isn't a lobbyist.
Okay.
Okay. So it's all of them, plus the Casino Association, which I represented, plus the Atlantic City Chamber of Commerce, because they were fearful that people like you wouldn't go to Atlantic City anymore because you just bet on your phone. So I said something pretty simple, wasn't scripted, came to mind. Senator Shirley Turner, who's 78 years old, running for re-election right now, African-American woman representing Trenton. A lot of people in the Trenton-Mercer area work in casinos. Said, Mr. Pascrell, I have two concerns. One, I want to make sure my constituents don't lose their jobs. Valid point. They're not. Two, I don't want to promote gambling addiction because they figure if you're more on the phone, the more chance you're going to. Two easy answers. Senator Turner, you have a refrigerator and a stove and probably a beautiful kitchen, refrigerator full of food, as do I. And we like to cook and eat. We still go out to restaurants, don't we? Why? Because we're social animals. Because there's you could be stuck in your room in your boxers playing this, but there's nothing like being at a craps table or a live experience, a lived experience. Now, fast forward to today just to prove the point. There's no proof anywhere in the world that online cannibalizes brick and mortar. And we've proven that because during the pandemic, nobody was going to casinos. But if it wasn't for online, those casinos would have shut forever. The reason for that is what I developed, which is called the skin concept. So if you have a license to operate a brick and mortar casino, you get to have 5 casino online licenses.
Wow.
So you can partner with 5 online companies because the brick and mortar don't have that technology. And you get a rev share from all that. Number 2, right now, Senator Turner, this is the second question. You're concerned about responsible gaming and gambling addiction? So am I. However, what do you know that's going on in the black market? Somebody's going on Bovado or Five Dimes or any of the black market companies. You can't track them. When you legalize it, the government tracks every bet placed, and you can start to see when people are creeping into gambling addiction, slow them down, time them out, and do different things.
Right.
So it was a lobby effort that took a lot of, it's not as simple as a court case.
Okay.
Because it's not one experience. It's the Senate Gaming Committee. Then it's the Senate Budget Committee. Then it's the full Senate. And the same thing in the Assembly. Then you have to lobby the governor to sign the bill. And then the regulations get developed after the bill's signed. How's this going to look? You know, it's legal now.
It's a lot.
But now we have to regulate how it operates.
Well, even like you said, it's actually easier to monitor gambling addiction on the phone versus going into the casino.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. The other thing I said is the online industry cannot treat the gambling addicted customer like the brick and mortar industry treated them. Johnny, in the heyday of Vegas and Atlantic City, anybody who had a gambling addiction was treated as a VIP customer.
Oh, yeah.
So you know what? You need a marker. Here's more, here's more, here's more. Online can't afford to do that. You can't just check the box and put a 1-800 number to call if you're having a problem. You have to have something behind it. And there's a lot of technology, which we can talk about if you want.
Well, you know what? This is so intriguing, but we've got to come up for a little air. I know you need to take a deep breath and reset, and we're going to get some water in us. Be right back.
A few minutes later.
Yeah, so this is, wow, I got to tell you, you think you know somebody 20 years, and I feel like so unaccomplished now. Like I haven't done anything to contribute to this relationship. What have I done?
Got me a roomie pot.
And let's because you're talking about a lot of the political influences and experiences, and the one thing you haven't touched on is you may not have been an elected official politician, but you were the president of North Jersey Country Club. And let's not forget, you had someone you pulled into this world, very hesitant, being me. But the alignment, right? We know it always matters. So that was always a fun thing I reflect on, although while we were going through it and helping and contributing and volunteering our time to be of the greater development of, a place that we both love. It comes with some scars, right?
Sure does.
Yeah. When you do something like that, you probably don't want to necessarily go back and do it again, right? So,
Well, John, you did me a huge favor by agreeing I lobbied you
you
successfully.
did. Unbelievable.
John, your dad should have been the president of the club. The club would have been phenomenal. He's just got the gift. I did it. I regret having done it.
Do you?
But I did it. I would never do it again.
Why do you regret?
It was so time consuming in a time in my life where my business is exploding, and I'm going through a divorce, and I'm hooking up with my current significant other, having a child. It was just way too much. And John is my vice president, but really my partner. I don't even like to call him that because he was always there for me. And he wasn't, your dad is not what I call a grin fucker, okay? Your dad doesn't just sit there and say, yeah, okay, Bill, yeah. He tells me when I do wrong, when I do right, constructive criticism, kept me aligned, kept me calm. It's overly consuming. In the first 3 months, your dad and I had to deal with the manager quitting, the chef getting fired, the pro, the golf pro, the caddy master, everybody left. Right. Whether it was because of us or not, we're happy they did because the club is so much better for it. We got a lot accomplished, the redevelopment of the clubhouse, a great new pro staff, new chef, new manager. It all worked out great. But it's a labor of love because we get nothing. I got something out of it, a parking spot. You didn't even get a parking spot, right? You get the president's parking spot. Big deal.
And the best part, I lobbied for the parking spot
for
you, right?
They wanted to take it away.
No one wanted to have that.
They didn't want to give you a parking lot, a parking spot.
We did it in the basement of your dad's house. We had our first board meeting there.
And interestingly enough, so today, I always felt like, even before I was, on the executive committee and Billy was the president, I always felt like you get nothing when you step over the line. Okay, you understand that. That's what you sign up for. But at least in a place where you're paying, right? You're paying for membership to be part of something, and you're donating and dedicating your time. There should be a little something.
You don't even get a discounted membership?
Nothing. No.
What's the point?
No, nothing.
Well,
that's the part. People like your dad and I do it because we believe in the club. We want to make it better. And listen, I'm not saying it should be a compensated position, but there should be some incentive because you're going to see as time develops, less and less people like your dad are going to be interested in going into leadership positions. Yeah. 2, we're there for fun. We have enough stress in our lives. Right. And I don't want to overstate the stress in our lives because we enjoy what we do. But this is an additional stress, and it's supposed to be our sandbox. So now John and I have your dad and I have a friend at the club who does something stupid, and he's got to be disciplined. Yeah. So you send it to the comportment committee, and they come to us and say, well, you should have taken care of us. Well, you shouldn't have broken the rules. Right? That's the type of stuff that you really need. That John and I would come up, your dad and I'd play golf on a Saturday morning. He'd get pummeled. My burger was too cold.
The coffee was too hot.
The coffee was too hot. The ice cream was too cold. We say at North Jersey Country Club, you want a friend? Get a dog.
Yeah, well, that it's very taxing, and it's very taxing anytime, even public servants. I mean, you give of your time, and you put yourself out there, and you become criticized, right? So yeah, friends that you thought were friends may not have been friends because they challenge you and want you to do favors, and it's not really the place you can do stuff like
Sunshine
that.
Friends.
But with that being
Sunshine
said,
Friends.
Yeah, Sunshine Friends. So with that being said, it is so interesting to listen to you, and because I've not heard the few things you shared already, and I've heard so many other things, but I didn't hear some of what you just shared with us. So and what I took from the first piece of going and meeting Steve Wynn is you got in your car and you drove with just the conviction that, well, I got to go see this guy. You didn't know who he was. You invested hours down, 3 hours back, only then to be rewarded with another hour or so to go into the city and be humiliated.
Correct.
So, but look what it did. it somehow laid the groundwork for so many successful
It
things
helped.
today. So the people that are in our audience that listen to us are continually, they always want to understand, how can I be successful? What do I need to do? What are some of the practices? And I profess, and you just reinforced it because we come from this, you have to put yourself out there. You've got to do the things at times that are not comfortable, that you aren't really sure of what the payout might be. You know, you don't just do things because you shouldn't just do things because you know of what it's going to become, right? You need to go with some blind faith and need to just go with your instincts at times. So credit to you, man. I love that story. I never heard that story before.
Yeah, I mean, I think the final point on this is I've been fortunate. I am not the brightest ship in the port by far. I'm not the sharpest arrow in the quiver by far, but nobody's going to outwork me. That I have. That's the way I was raised. I've made a career of making chicken salad out of chicken shit. What do I mean? Challenge gets thrown at you. A lot of people kind of cower and retreat. I double down because I say, you know what? I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in myself. I think I was raised right. That's very helpful. And there are no shortcuts in life. Everybody wants to take a shortcut. So I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of adversity in life. Spinal meningitis, on my deathbed, given last rites by the bishop, Rodimer, when I was 16 years old.
What?
Came out of that 45 days in a coma, went from 150 pounds soaking wet to 72 pounds, and got a second lease on life. I have juvenile diabetes. I take insulin every day, type 1. That changed my life because you know what I was doing? I was playing baseball at Don Bosco, and I thought I was hot shit. And I was doing stupid stuff like drugs and alcohol at a young age. Not reckless, but not a smart thing to do. And that changed my life because I said, you know what? I got a second lease on life. And there's nothing worse than being in St. Joe's Hospital and your parents not being able to be in the room when you get your 8th spinal tap and looking through the window at you and your father's crying. I only saw my father cry twice in my life. That was the first time. I survived it. And it made me a better person. And I've had other challenges in life. The Trump experience wasn't cool. I thought I lost my job. And there's been other areas in life. But you know what the funny thing about it is? Jealousy is the worst thing in life you can have because it makes you do irrational things. It makes you hurt people. It makes you do things that are dodgy. So just keep moving forward. Believe in yourself. It sounds easy. It's not. And I think, you know, my epitaph will be he made chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Do you reflect on being 16, 17 years old in the hospital, or do you kind of just carry that with yourself?
Well, at moments like this, when I'm reflecting because you're allowing me to, I do reflect on it, and I feel very, very fortunate. I was bitter, John, for many, many years, Johnny. Very bitter. Because when you're diabetic, I couldn't play baseball for a while. Yeah. So I lost that career path. I was a pretty decent, not as good as your dad, but a pretty decent baseball player and had prospects of getting a college scholarship. That was out the door. And then I'd be in school and I get low blood sugar and you're dealing with all those issues. Your dad's been with me when I've had those episodes.
Yeah, scary
So
episodes.
you get bitter, but then you say to yourself, my buddy just dropped out of a heart attack at 53. I'm still here. So everybody gets challenges. Is how you deal with them. And I try to use it to make me a better person.
Right. Well, I've never heard of that story.
Yeah.
It's rare that you get to slow a guy like him down for this. And so, again, I've heard that story, but not in the detail. Like your dad crying. This, again, is so rewarding for me. And, you know, as, again, your friend and someone who's known you a long time. But this is a great example, again, yet of another thing where you said it, John's allowing, or we're allowing you an opportunity to slow down and speak and think and share.
You don't do it often.
And we don't. And another takeaway is, well, we should be doing more of that with our family,
Correct.
With our friends, and putting the phone down and being more engaged, right? And it's a hard thing to be mindful of sometimes, but you know, a good start is usually put the phone, put it aside. So thanks for sharing that. That's some other
Thank you for allowing
great
me to.
stuff, man.
Absolutely. So, I mean, everything you've been saying is I've never heard. And like he said, I'm learning so much about you for the first time, and I've known you for so long. And that's honestly what if I reflect on this podcast for the last 8 episodes, the best part about it is I get to learn so much about people that I thought I knew for so long. And I would never have this conversation with you if it wasn't for this. So again, yeah, thank you for coming and really do appreciate your time. But I wanted to pivot into, I guess, more recent news, right? As a politician, as a lobbyist, I'm sure you've heard the news about TikTok and what's going on with Congress right now. I want your entire take, how you feel about how they treated it, what you think is going to happen, and what you think should happen.
I am not a big fan of governments here or abroad banning anything, okay? Because I think what it does is it pushes young people and less informed and educated people. They feel, well, there must be something cool about this. Let me do it anyway, okay? Listen, I am totally opposed to what Russia's doing to the Ukraine, and this is related. Totally opposed. I think it's ridiculous. I was in the Ukraine, Johnny and John, in the war was last year, December of 21, 2 months before the war.
Wow.
Beautiful. I was in Kyiv, Ukraine on business. I had 3 clients there. I went to board meetings and then, of course, I was there. There was a conference in the CIS region, which is like Belarus, Georgia, Ukraine, that whole region that often gets ignored. Ukraine is a huge country. When we flew in, you could see, because you just kind of creep across a little bit across the border, you could see the military buildup. Now, Putin made a big mistake. Putin should have invaded in the cold, cold winter. He shouldn't have waited until February of last year when the thaw started coming, because the jeeps couldn't make the tanks couldn't make it across the border as quickly and efficiently. Why is this related? Listen, I think China, it's obviously one of the largest nations in the world, second to India. They have a long history. It's a communist government. It's not what we're used to, capitalism and democracy. They don't have a lot of freedoms we have. But I think China is trying a little bit to kind of push Russia back into place, because if this Ukraine thing blows up, it could be a domino effect for NATO, for the rest of Europe. So I'm glad that our government, I don't want to get political here. Whoever is the president, we can talk about, but they're very doubling down with Ukraine. And I think that's important. It's amazing what the Ukrainian government and Zelensky has accomplished. China's involvement with TikTok, I can't tell you whether it's real or not real. Sure, it's of concern, right? We want to make sure that our data on TikTok isn't getting shared with an enemy. But the CEO last week before Congress did a superb job. I thought he was amazing. And it's a tough thing when you have Democrats and Republicans poking questions at you, trying to answer them. The worst thing our government can do is ban TikTok. That's the worst. Now, if you want to say, listen, we need this information, we want to analyze it, and if you're creeping into stuff that you told us you're not doing, then we're going to slap you. There's 150 million TikTok users in America. You shut them off, there's going to be a massive protest on it. God only knows what it's going to result in, and it's not necessary because it doesn't accomplish anything. There's controls, belts and suspenders you can put in place to make sure that TikTok is driving in the right lane. Yeah. So that's my view on it.
That's an interesting, because like you just said, it's not, what does it accomplish when it then does happen? And I think from my standpoint, I only watched a little bit of it, it just seemed like the questions they were asking and their lack of willingness to listen to his response seemed very like ignorant and uneducated.
Scripted.
Yeah, like they weren't even, like the questions they were asking was like, do you even know what the app does? Or it just seems like I could have created better questions.
None of them knew what the app does.
Right.
And you could tell.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem. They should have had their staffs who are younger.
I
Show
completely
them.
agree. Right.
Do you think that much of what, and I watched, it was 5 hours. Okay, it was 5 hours. I watched the replay of it, probably 3 hours of it. And it wasn't consistent, but throughout my day, yesterday, I watched probably 3 hours of it. And I took some notes, and I
You
felt
watched
like
3 hours of this?
Yeah. Well, I let it play, and I was doing my thing. That I
Yeah.
was watching. I
Just
mean,
listen.
it wasn't the only thing that
It's committed.
I wasn't doing a lot. Well, number one, it affects us
Big time.
square in the mouth, right? This is going to help us prepare. Well, we have to prepare. You have to think about it. Put your head in the sand and say, "Oh, it's not going away." Bill just said he doesn't think it's going away, so we're fine.
I honestly, it would be business as usual for us. I don't think it would change.
Well, we should conduct business as usual, yes, but we should also have a strategy that would say, well, what do we do if it does change? If the platform is different?
I think, and this has something to do with this. I think every creator should never be a one-trick pony. You should never rely on any platform or one platform to be your saving grace. So if you go viral on TikTok, and right now it is the easiest platform to go viral because they prioritize content over follower count or page, which is good and bad. But insulate yourself by starting your own community on a Discord chat or an email list or other platforms or in person. So I think what we've been doing is just been insulating ourselves in that way. But yeah, I mean, look, it would change a little bit of our outcome. It wouldn't change anything we've been doing.
I don't disagree with change anything we're doing. I think it's irresponsible if you don't at least have a conversation
Backup
about
redundancy.
Okay, right, Billy? I mean, is
Backup
that am I
redundancy.
all right? So
This is a pure political question, though. We saw the balloons come over the country from China, and we shot them down. And all. This is kind of a way for them to say, well, we kind of screwed up. How did they come across our border and last for multiple days, right? So it's both sides of the aisle. They're trying to let the American people think we're going tough on China.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, John, you can have, and I'm sure you do, multiple Chinese espionage agents in our country stealing data every day. What are you doing about that? Right. So now we're going to ban TikTok, which has a lot of benefits. I don't think they're going to ban it. I think they're saber rattling. I'm hoping that everything the CEO, and I have no reason to doubt him, was accurate. And if so, I think it'll be fine for the moment. But who knows what can come down next?
Now, do you think it checks and raises some sort of awareness to what our social medias are doing? I mean, the biggest data grabbers are Meta, and like what they're doing is worse than TikTok. But the only difference is it's American on American.
Right. That's the only difference. And what we're trying to create the image of is that since it's China and they're our enemy, that we have to be careful of that. But you think the folks with the metadata are not selling it elsewhere?
Right. And they've been caught doing that.
So, I mean, that's the whole thing about political leaders that try to bring people together are the ones I like and find inspiring versus those that try to divide us. Find commonality, bring people together. Like, I don't hate Chinese people. I dislike the Chinese government.
Right.
Give you an example. Spot on story. The last night I was in the Ukraine. I went to a beautiful, elegant dinner, 40 people. 4 tables of 10. Awesome meal. Russian food, Georgian food, Ukrainian food, all great. And they had the different kinds of wines from the regions. There was an open bar. So at the end of dinner before dessert, I go to the bar, and I had a few $100 with me, and I hand it to the bartender, and he said, "Sir, no, this is an open bar." I said, "No, this is a tip because you're going to get me 4 bottles of Jameson and 40 shot glasses and put them out." He goes, "Sir, you don't have to pay for this." I said, "No, I insist." Jameson is what I love. I enjoy drinking it outside of gin, but it was a beautiful 2 hours after that because the Russians like their vodka. Like, we know that, right? They love that, but they don't drink Jameson a lot. So they're drinking American whiskey, hanging out. There was no talk of politics. There was no like, oh, you're jerks, you're nice people, you're not. The problem is our governments oftentimes reflect who we are when we travel. And that's frustrating because I'm not supported who's the president of the United States. And why should that be a reflection on me?
Right.
But I think Putin is his own worst enemy. And I think Putin's doing a great job. He's isolated right now. So the question becomes, does he start to do really scarier things than he's already done? And that's a concern.
So you said before saber rattling, right?
Yeah.
Which again is another great takeaway of your soundbite collage. So if we, and I hear that, I want to be clarified because I was going to ask you, do you think much of what goes on is posturing, right? Is for optics. and I'm asking a question I know the answer to, but again, you're the expert here, if you would. And so, yeah, in listening to it yesterday, I couldn't help but not only feel like John did, that they don't know what they're talking about, which is an age thing, and that's fine. And they have a place and a world of people that they're representing, and they have a responsibility. Get it? I see both sides of it. I left watching that feeling like, wow. I mean, this is a tough one. Like, this is not as black and white. Mr. Chu did get pummeled, and he handled it really well.
He did.
And some of what it was just rhetorical and just not fair and whatever. But that's, to your point of when you say that, that's what is some of that responsibility of that committee, to raise awareness, put eyeballs on it, and then let the public, right? Am I correct? Like, now what happens after that? What do you think after that demonstration, display, show? What's the next step with this?
First of all, I think TikTok CEO did a phenomenal job by keeping his patience, his wit, and his manners in place. Oftentimes we can't do that, particularly as Italian Americans, we get revved up. That was great, because oftentimes what happens is when a politician's coming at you and then you go back and disrespect them, that becomes the reason they do something versus the real substance. Number two, I think for the moment, TikTok is fine, but I also want to say something. Talked about making chicken salad out of chicken shit. TikTok, and I hope they agree with me, I think TikTok benefited from this.
I was just going to ask that.
I think they benefited from it because they got national free exposure for 5 hours, plus all the news media repeats. And I don't think they came out looking bad. And I think the American public are like, what's going on here? We have so many issues, inflation and the banking collapses with SVB and Signature Bank. Why are we focused on this?
Right.
The gun issue that just came up again yesterday in Nashville. Like, don't talk about that. But yet we're focused on TikTok because Chinese balloons flew over our country and we feel we have to do something. Listen, I think oftentimes the road to hell is paved by good intentions. And I think a lot of politicians try to do things in an expedited way, think of what the priorities are. If you're going to do something, if you're going to legislate or regulate something, read about it, learn about it, study it before you go do something.
Which is like, so you would expect them to do that, though.
You would, but they don't, obviously.
And I think it almost, for me, and what I saw online, because like you just said, it put TikTok on blast and they handled it very well. It's almost the point of like, what are we doing here? And then you go in the opposite direction, and everything I see now is TikTok isn't even bad. Look at what Facebook is doing. So like I said before, it's now raising awareness to, hey, we have other issues that we should probably handle, A, but B, look at what we're also dealing with and have dealt with for the past 10 years that you don't even hear about. That just sort of flies by because they're this big American company that have all this money that they don't know what to do with.
Not to get too far off point, but we all know, regardless of our political party, what a sad day it was, January 6th. We know that, right? What about all the social media outlets that enabled those folks to do what they did that went unpoliced? Right? Where was the focus on that? Now you're going after TikTok because data is getting shared. Every major technology company shares data. Now the CEO made some representations. I think he was telling the truth because he looked like a truthful person. He was credible. We'll see what transpires out of it.
Yeah, but inevitably it's raising awareness. It's brand awareness right there. It was, like you said, 5 hours of free promo. For now, if you weren't on TikTok, maybe if he handled himself well and you felt like he handled himself well, you're going to try it out now.
Exactly.
And now you feel a little safer to try it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Total.
Kudos to him, I guess. And
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what happens.
He did well.
The other, I was doing some research too. I think the other thing that was trending a while back was Ticketmaster. And I know your dad had some involvement with the Boss Act. I want to hear your thoughts on that as well, because that's something that is overlooked sometimes too, is the monopolies that will gatekeep these tickets and then charge an incredible price. And now these artists are getting blamed for it. Like, how do you feel about that whole situation?
I want to start, like I did before, a little one-off, just to show contextually that I really appreciate what you're thank you so much for allowing me to be on and to share, because I love this stuff. When I first started lobbying, this is related, I'll connect it, I'll bridge it. When I first started lobbying online gaming, I was representing iMega, and then I had to lobby other companies to join us. So I met with a guy by the name of Isai Scheinberg. You wouldn't know that name, but you know the company, PokerStars. Mm-hmm. Isai Scheinberg is the founder of PokerStars. He's a Russian Jew that flew and camped out in Canada. He was the VP of operations for IBM in Canada while his family's back in Russia. This is in the heyday. The guy's worth $6-7 billion now. What did he do when he was in his apartment at night? What do guys do? Go to strip joints, they go to bars, go to sporting events. He started to create a software company called Peer Software, which is the technology platform behind PokerStars. Why do I bring this up? Isai Scheinberg, PokerStars, Caesars, and a few other companies, including First Data, which is a payment processing company, were paying $40 million a year to lobby Washington to pass an online gaming bill. Now, dial it back. Automobile insurance is a state issue. The federal government doesn't regulate it. Gaming is a state issue. The federal government doesn't regulate it. All they do is pass the Wire Act, which says you can't cross state lines with a sports bet. You know who the sponsor of the bill in Washington was for online gaming? Barney Frank, the first openly gay, okay, and my father.
Really?
And my father, he couldn't tell you today what online gaming is for the most part.
Right.
He's not a mobile-friendly guy. He's 86 years old. I just want to share that with you to give you the experience. A lot of politicians do that. They drop bills and should do a better job of studying it.
You're saying your dad should have?
He should have. Okay. And he did over time.
Okay.
But I told Isai Scheinberg, I said, pay me 10% of that $40 million you're spending a year, and I'll get you a bill passed in New Jersey. And he bought into it. And he looks like a genius now.
Wow.
Because they were spending $40 million a year over 10 years and couldn't even get a committee hearing.
And you went and did it.
We got it done in Jersey and then started trampoline it in other states. The federal government's not, and nor should they be involved in. They could barely run a one-car funeral. They should not be involved in sports betting.
Right.
The federal government, and my dad's a part of that. I think he's a good, honorable man, and he's ethical, and I'm proud of him. Let's fast forward to the Boss Act. I know my dad's been to many concerts in his life, but probably hasn't been to that many that you and I would, your dad and I, maybe you and I would appreciate, because I like Black Eyed Peas and I like Tom Petty, God rest his soul, and I've been to Stones concerts and Yes and Floyd and Judas Priest. I was a big fan of. My father was outraged because he saw constituents were getting raked over the coals. He represents a blue-collar district.
Right.
You know, he's just now back into Wayne. But Patterson is blue-collar. Yep. They can't afford $1,000 to go see a concert.
Yeah.
And you know, Ticketmaster, I think, has really taken advantage of people because these young kids want to go, but they don't have the coin. So my dad collaborated with Jon Stewart and Bruce Springsteen. My dad was just at the White House last week when Springsteen was honored by the president. Wow. Because my dad's the sponsor and the author of the Boss Act. Now, he did a lot of homework talking to Bruce and other performers to try to just say, hey, look, and you would have thought that Ticketmaster would say, maybe we should self-regulate. Maybe we should dial this back. They're going to get hit over the head with a hammer. It's coming. And now it's also creeping into airlines and other hotels that have all these additional charges. You know, it's $110 for a room, and by the time you pay for the room, it's $250.
Right.
What are we doing?
Stay fees. Yeah.
Well,
Correct.
I'd say the biggest regulation, or I guess an example of one, would be like gas prices, right? There's a percentage where you can't charge up, right? Whatever they get the gas for, they can only charge a certain percentage of.
You can't rebate, and they're like cigarettes, same thing.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and alcohol. You can't go above a certain number.
Right.
Maybe that's where they'll go, but they also need to better detail the fees.
Where it's going.
And have a little bit of a ceiling on them.
Like a justification for
$1,000 to see a concert. And I'm not talking about front row seats.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, the Taylor Swift concerts were like $2,500, and now I just heard 3 hours ago that they're suing. They're suing Ticketmaster. I don't know what they're standing on, like what they're going to sue for, but they are in some sort of case right now.
See the issue of, I don't want to just malign Ticketmaster because I think it's all of them.
Yeah.
They get the tickets and then they resell them. And it's the resale eclipsing the original ticket price by numbers. Taylor Swift, Bruce Springsteen never see that money.
Right.
They just make money off the core initial price.
It's a secondary market, but
Correct.
but with no access for anybody else to get into the primary market.
Correct.
That's,
Correct.
I think, the problem.
Totally correct.
I have no chance of getting the first ticket because Ticketmaster bought them before I even knew about it.
And it's so funny. Like, I'm a big college basketball fan and I'm a giant ticket holder and all. So it took me a while to get used to having the tickets on my phone because if you didn't download them and you come into the property, sometimes your Wi-Fi is not working. And now, but now I'm a little bit more nimble.
Yeah.
But I just think, if you're 20 something years old and you're in college, how do you get to go to a concert? What are you going to do?
You don't.
You're going to do some bad shit if you really want to go.
Right.
To get that money.
That's a good point. And who else is going to these concerts?
Right.
So I want to wrap up by asking you, I guess, where you think the future of online gambling will go. But before that, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back very soon.
A few minutes later.
And we're back. I was curious on, because it seems almost like a rinse and repeat process, right? You what you did for New Jersey as far as online gambling, why is that not just happen? Because we were talking about it off camera. What's happening now is that if I can't place a bet because I'm in some random state that doesn't allow it, I'm texting and Venmoing my friend that's in Jersey and placing the bet for me. So like you said, restriction creates a negative approach to what should be legal anyway. So why are these things just not happening?
Okay. So right now, Johnny and John, there's 7 states that have online gaming. Really 6. Nevada only has poker.
It's so interesting that Nevada
Just
doesn't allow.
poker
Right.
online. So the other 6 states have full poker and casino, right? Roulette, craps, live dealer, all that. I was shocked because a Republican governor signed the bill that I lobbied, not a Democratic governor. Governor Murphy, who succeeded Governor Christie was termed out, has supported it also. And I don't want to get overly political, but I'm just going to tell you the truth. This is axiomatic. Donald Trump was furiously opposed to online gaming. Why? Sheldon Adelson, who is the CEO, founder, and president, or whatever the heck you want to call it, of the Sands casino operation. The 3 best things that happened to online gaming, and I'm not being cute and I'm not disrespecting. Sheldon Adelson died 2 years ago. Donald Trump lost his election, and Joe Biden, who comes from an online gaming state, became president. Joe Biden doesn't oppose it. He doesn't promote it. He doesn't have to. It's a states' rights issue. Why was Sheldon Adelson so important? Sheldon Adelson was the guy who gave Donald Trump tens of millions of dollars for his campaign. So every Republican wanted that money, and so they wouldn't support it. When Sheldon died and Trump lost, I got to be careful here, but I got a call from a Republican governor's chief of staff in the South. They have sports betting, but not online. And he wanted to hire me to help him navigate bringing online to the state. Now, most people can figure this out, but I want to be respectful because the governor didn't give me permission to promote his name, and I don't need to.
Sure.
He said, I went down, I had a glass of bourbon with him in his office, and he said, you and I couldn't disagree more on politics, but I like what you've done in the gaming industry, and I want to hire you. I said, no. I will work for free for you. So I don't want to be conflicted out of doing work in your state. If the law passes, I got to get my clients licensed. I got to get them sorted. And they're more important business to me than one state. And he appreciated that.
Now, what was the reason for not wanting to get paid for that? Like, what would happen if you did?
So if I was hired by a state to give them advice and counsel on online, I wouldn't be able to represent companies coming in to get licensed.
Why?
Because it's conflict.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm representing the state,
Understood,
and
yeah.
now, so I didn't want to chance that.
Yeah.
And the governor was nice. He said, well, I'll get you an opinion. I said, no. I'm happy. Having a relationship with a governor is a good thing, right? The more I have, the better. So Sheldon Adelson was deeply, vehemently opposed to online gaming. A, he didn't believe in my argument against cannibalization. B, he was worried about his grandchildren getting, into it. and a whole host of other reasons. And he spent millions of dollars lobbying against online by paying politicians to just sit in the sidelines. He's gone now. DeSantis has opened up their position. And Sheldon was very powerful with what's called the American Gaming Association, which is the largest industry trade group that was against online gaming, and now they're not.
Are those the only two arguments they have to stand on? Is that it'll take away and cannibalize real casinos and it increases addiction? Like you said, those arguments are you deaded them in 30 seconds.
Well, you also have to understand, Johnny, in the Bible Belt, there's a lot of resistance to gambling and other things, right? So you can't go down and dictate to them. You got to go down and socialize it, have a dinner, educate before you advocate. The other thing that's important to note, we only have 6 states with casino and poker and 1 state with just poker online. 36 states plus the District of Columbia have sports betting now.
Right.
4 years ago, they didn't. So that's moved because sports betting in public opinion polls is not viewed as gambling.
Why?
Public perception. Of course it's gambling, but it's public perception, so people feel more comfortable. But I think the reason is more cultural. When your father and I grew up in the high schools we went to, every Tuesday morning after the Monday Night Football game, I get a betting slip for the next week's games. And I check it off and give them 5 or 10, whatever it was. I'm betting illegally.
Right.
But nobody goes after the little high school kid, right? That's standard fare. So it's so much a part of our culture. You're with your mom and dad, and you say, well, the Knicks versus the Sixers. Dad, I'll bet you $5. It's like part of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe cards to a degree, particularly in the Italian culture, but not casinos, right? That's something that takes time to get used to. But what governments need to understand, I'd love to have you come in and testify. Yeah, okay, I can't bet. I'm in, pick a state, I don't know, Texas. And I can't bet. I just Venmo my friend in New Jersey and tell him a place to bet for me.
Right.
The state loses taxes, no job creation, no way to track that bet with the original punter. So
it's almost like the same argument for cannabis legalization.
Totally.
I'm getting it anyway if I want it.
You're going to get it.
Right. Not me, but
You're going to get it.
And you're going to testify now? This is unbelievable.
And I'm
You're going to put a suit on, though. You better suit up.
Nah, I'm going to wear this. Maybe even dress down.
No, you got to put a suit on.
Sweatpants. The other question I did have about gambling, and this is something that I've seen online, and I don't know how accurate it is. The NFL is considered an entertainment business. So legally, they're allowed to rig and skew the outcome of games.
Mm-mm.
So that's where where TikTok and social media can steer you wrong. That is the narrative online sometimes, is just like the WWE, where they can fix the outcome, so can the NFL legally. And that was like the discrepancy of why can you bet on an organization that can then fix what's going on. So that's not true.
No. So I was in Barcelona 3 summers ago at a gaming conference, the World Gaming Executive Summit, where I was talking about a lot of these issues before a nice crowd. And the Nathan's hot dog eating contest calls me and says, we need to hire you. For what? We want people to bet on Nathan's hot dogs. Wow. I said, do you have rules? Well, not really. I said, well, when you develop rules and you have like an official integrity platform, give me a call back. Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll hire somebody else. Paid somebody a fortune, didn't get him licensed, and then Nathan's came back, and now you can bet on Nathan's hot dog eating. Last summer was the first summer you could do it. 2, this is the first year you could bet on the Oscars in Jersey. You could bet on the Oscars. Right?
Wait, they came to you first for the Nathan hot dog?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And then they pay double, by the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, they pay somebody else.
And why did you want to do it? Just
No. I told them go out and get your integrity and rules in place.
Yeah.
If they don't have rules, I'm not going to sit here and make rules. I don't know shit about Nathan's hot dog eating, but I know you need rules in place.
Sure. Okay.
It's like one of the big online companies just did a deal streaming minor league baseball. You can't bet on minor league baseball.
Right.
Okay. So now the question is, are they going to try to lobby to be able to bet on minor league baseball? If you could put controls in place, WWE is trying to be able to have people bet on their content. But we know that it's kind of a fixed thing, so that's going to be a challenge. It's got to be a real outcome that can't be manipulated. Final point on this, because I could talk all day. I love football. I despise the NFL.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because I got a constitutional amendment in the New Jersey ballot passed with 67% approval in in November of 2011. Passed overwhelmingly. Republicans, Democrats, men, women, all age groups. The NFL brought an injunction to stop us. Why did they do that? Every bet that was placed in Nevada for the last 25 years and probably more, they got a clip of the ticket. If you bet on an NFL ticket in Nevada, it had the NFL logo on it. They claimed that by legalizing sports betting, you were going to jeopardize the integrity of the game. Well, what's going on in Nevada? And that turned into our 10-year battle. They are a bunch of hypocrites, but I do like their content. I like football. I don't hate football. I despise the NFL because I don't think, just like what they've done with players beating their wives, sexual harassment suits, brain injury, they deflect, they never address the core issue.
Interesting.
And they were and they were allowed to take a piece of each bet?
Yeah.
Why?
That's how they set it up.
That's how it played out. They put their logo on it, so they got, we're giving you our logo, so we should get a percentage of each ticket.
That's insane.
It was in the Supreme Court briefs that we put. This case went from New Jersey federal court to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court. I thought we would win, but I never thought we'd win 7-2. I thought we'd win 5-4.
And what were you fighting for?
To repeal the federal law of PASPA, the Professional Amateur Sports Protection Act, which, by the way, was written by Bill Bradley, former New York Knickerbocker, former senator from New Jersey. He didn't like all the betting going on in the locker room, so he wanted to ban it. Got it. That law we repealed. And we repealed it saying, how can one state, Nevada, have the right to do something when the other states can't? So we got multiple attorney generals and governors from across the country, Republican and Democrat. Governor Christie was a big supporter of it as a Republican, and we got it repealed. We got the federal law turned over.
Got it. So I guess in short terms, what makes the WWE different than the NFL as far as entertainment versus like what you're legally allowed to bet on one versus the other?
So listen, if you have information, please share it, but I don't believe the NFL fixes games. If they do, then there's going to be a major investigation on that. You cannot game fix. That is not permitted. And the regulators in sports betting, and I'll tell you a quick story. I want to answer the second question. Everybody knows the WWE is fixed.
Of course.
They have to sort that. And they have to prove that these are legitimate skill games with outcomes that are not predetermined. Now, this is interesting because you just taught me something. I never saw, and once something's on social media, people believe it.
Of course.
I never saw the NFL fix a game.
That's what people, the narrative, again, people love conspiracy theories nowadays. It's like the biggest thing. So anything that happens, there's going to be somebody that says, well, look at what really happened. And this is the
quick story you'll love. I was brought to Nevada, and I'd been there dozens and dozens of times, to go to sports books, to educate myself like politicians should do about what goes on behind a sports book. A sports book has guys like you that are called risk managers that develop the odds. You bring all the data in. This guy's hurt. This guy's going through a divorce. This guy just beat his wife. His wife just bet him. He's injured. He's not. He's sort of injured, but he's coming back. Take all that information. You match them up, and you put odds out. Now, those odds are very important because they got to be pretty accurate or within the margin. Everybody always says, how are these odds makers so accurate? That's what they do for a living.
Right.
When I went to a sports book, which I'll keep nameless, not because they did anything wrong, there were a lot of guys like you, young bucks, making decent coin, but they were paid by the leagues on top of their salary to police the game. Hockey, PGA, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, soccer, they would pay these young folks to police the games because the last thing the NFL needs is for people to think that the matches are fixed, true or not.
Right. Now, when you say police, what were they actually doing?
They were monitoring. Who's going to know if a game's fixed? You're going to know because John Rondi comes in all of a sudden, Tennessee versus the Giants, and he just went the other way against the odds and put $1 million in. Somebody's watching that.
So they're policing as in like they're just betting on what they should be betting on to kind of keep the odds
They're
consistent.
policing the betting, and they're also policing the outcome of the game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, it's huge.
The
NFL would come tumbling down if anybody proved that they were match fixes.
Of course, and that's
would
why
come tumbling
this crazy narrative online. I'm glad we debunk that right
Well,
here.
people believe that.
Of course
stuff.
they do.
You know, they
Debunked.
just have no other reason not to.
They put their what do they call it? Tinfoil hats on and conspiracize.
Yeah.
Conspiracize. That is another takeaway soundbite. Well, listen, I don't know about you, Johnny, but I enjoyed this.
Yeah, I want to hear. I mean, we're wrapping this up. Where are you going now? What's the future for Bill Pascrell III?
I'm leaving for Prague.
He's going to
tonight.
Prague.
All right.
I'm speaking at the Gaming Americas event. I'll be the only American there talking to Eastern European countries about getting into the U.S. market. The U.S. market is in its infancy. Okay. The black market still multiples outweighs the legal market.
Wow.
I mean, black market betting is in the billions and billions of dollars. Wow. And the more states that legalize it, the more that there will be downward pressure on those black market entities. Why is there still a black market? Because I don't have to get a license. I don't have to hire a guy like Bill Pascrell. I could just go in and take bets. Mm-hmm. Nobody polices me. Half the times I don't pay the winners anyway, and who's going to get me?
Yeah.
So why would you want to go and spend millions of dollars on a guy like me and get licensed and do it properly and make thin margins? By the way, the reason sports betting is got such a proliferation is the margins are thin in sports betting.
Yeah.
Like what the companies make is between 3 and 7%. In online casino and poker, multiples of that. Mm. So I'm hoping the industry puts a bigger focus on spreading out online gaming. That's one thing too. Payment processing is very important for anti-money laundering and making sure that things are done properly. Payment processors should be licensed. There are good payment processors, many of whom I represent, and there are bad payment processors. And then the next vertical, although there's downward pressure on this, and you guys know this well, I'm sure you've talked about it before. What's happened with Signature Bank and SVP has had a real bad impact on crypto. Crypto is used throughout the globe, but it hasn't been embraced in the U.S. for gambling. Okay, and we know that the pathway for crypto is through traditional banking, and as those banks collapse, that are big feeders, that makes it more challenging. The other thing about the banking collapse, or almost collapse, a few banks, we haven't gotten there yet, is the impact it has on startups. Startups like the guys behind these cameras now that could start up a tech company easy tomorrow, they need access to capital to get their tech done, to get designers, and to get it out there. It's not a cheap proposition, but that money's dried up.
Right.
Sorry, Dan and Maroof, you can't do it right now. I got to wait. We can give you
That's what we have you guys.
That's what, yeah.
Billy can give you a personal note, personal private note. But you know, one other thing people may not realize that how many languages do you speak?
I barely speak one.
There you go. All right. So he goes
Thank
to
God for Google Translate. Thank God, because I don't speak any Czech, but
you go to all these countries, and you're obviously someone's translating for you. So I know you, I just wanted to mention that to people who are kind of tuning into that. Well, good luck with your trip.
Thank you.
When you get back, we'll reconnect and we'll probably see each other in another 6 months. 4 months. We have this thank goodness for texting and that we both know how to utilize it, right? This was enlightening to say the least. Anyone who has the slightest bit of interest in knowing more about online gaming and political influences and some other things topic to current news is going to want to tune into this and listen to you. It has just been, for me personally, super fun. And listen, I'm a fan of yours to begin with, but now to hear some of the things that you started with, some of your personal struggles, and where you've evolved today, and I just can't be more proud of you as a guy that I would say is in my small sphere of people that I enjoy aligning with, right? So thank you, my man, and cheers, and so all the best.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, no, and again, we appreciate your time, especially knowing how busy you are. We always wrap up our podcast by asking 2 questions to the guest. One is going to be, what has been your most humbling experience of your life so far, and what has been your biggest accomplishment so far? You can answer in either order.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this was your executive producer's way of trying to tease me into it yesterday, and I didn't think seriously about it. I think my biggest accomplishment in life was being able to use a very, very traumatic experience when I was 16 and somewhat depressed and focused on my health, and use that as a motivator. I think that's the biggest accomplishment. I would also say parallels my 4 children. I have a 30-year-old, a 27-year-old, a 25-year-old, and an 8-year-old in 2 days. Wow. And I love all of them, and we all get along great. And they don't all have the same mother, but 3 of them do. So now what was the other one?
Your most humbling, a moment that really checked you.
I'd have to say an experience I had a few years ago when I was the county attorney in Passaic County for 22 years, and the politics changed. Your father was a big help at moving me on. I would not go to certain client meetings and business events because I wanted to be at the freeholder board, the county commissioners board, to represent them. I didn't get reappointed after being there for 22 years.
Wow.
It was a political thing. Some people thought I was getting too big for my britches, too hot, or I wasn't kowtowing to them. I was giving my independent. Anyway, long story short, they brushed me. Mm-hmm. You could say they fired me, they didn't reappoint me. And I used that like I used my sickness to motivate me, and my business exploded.
Wow.
So that was humbling.
Right.
Because it's not cool to have your ego bruised like that. We all want people to love us, and not everybody will.
It's a great soundbite to end on. Well, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Cheers, everybody.